Pooh Shiesty, one of the hottest rappers to come out of Memphis in the last 5 years, is reportedly in critical condition after getting jumped by Crips inside a federal prison. And bro, it gets way deeper than just that, because this ain't just some random altercation. This is about loyalty, about street politics, about what actually happens when you're a famous rapper locked up in a federal facility and you think your name is gonna protect you. Spoiler alert, it does not. So buckle up, gang, because by the time this video is over, you're gonna understand exactly what happened to Pooh Shiesty, why it happened, and why this situation is honestly one of the craziest things to come out of the rap world this year. Let's get into it. But before we dive all the way in, let me just set the scene real quick, because some of y'all might not be fully up to speed on who Pooh Shiesty even is and why this story matters so much. And trust me, once I lay the foundation, everything else is gonna hit that much harder. So pay attention, because I'm not gonna repeat myself. Pooh Shiesty, real name Lontrell Donnell Williams Jr., is a rapper out of Memphis, Tennessee. Born November 8th, 2000, this dude was literally 20 years old when he blew up. Most of us at 20 are trying to figure out what we want to eat for lunch, and this man was out here going platinum. He signed with Gucci Mane's 1017 Records, and he came out swinging hard. His debut mixtape, Shiesty Season, dropped in January 2021, and bro, that thing was a monster. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200, number 4, with a mixtape. That's not an album, that's a free project, and it still charted top 5 nationally. Then he dropped Back in Blood with Lil Durk, and that song went certified platinum multiple times over. The boy was on fire. And then, just like that, it all came crashing down. So get this. In October 2021, Pooh Shiesty pleaded guilty to a federal charge of conspiracy to commit robbery. The situation stemmed from an incident back in 2020 where Pooh Shiesty and some associates allegedly robbed 2 men at a hotel in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida. And during that robbery, one of the victims got shot. Now, I'm not here to make jokes about that because a man got shot and that's not funny, but the situation was serious enough that federal charges got involved, and once the feds are involved, you already know how that goes. In August 2022, Pooh Shiesty was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months in federal prison. Now, in the federal system, you typically serve 85% of your sentence with no early release for good behavior like in state prison. So we're talking he's looking at serving the vast majority of that time. He was sent to a low-security federal correctional institution, which at the time seemed like, okay, at least it's low security, right? At least he's not going somewhere super violent. Y'all are not ready for what happened next. Okay, so here's where it starts getting insane, and I want y'all to really pay attention here, because this is where the story goes from rapper goes to jail to something that is genuinely disturbing on multiple levels. Reports started coming out that Pooh Shiesty was not having an easy time in prison. Now, on the surface, that might sound obvious, like it's prison, nobody's having a good time. But it goes deeper than that, because Pooh Shiesty is a famous rapper. He's got millions of followers, he's got certified platinum records, he's got money, and you'd think that in prison, even just having that kind of name recognition might give you some level of protection, right? Like people know who you are, people respect the music, maybe you get a pass. No cap, that is not how it works in federal prison. That is not how it works at all. In federal prison, especially in the system Pooh Shiesty is navigating, your reputation on the outside means virtually nothing. What matters is where you're from, what sets you claim, what your affiliations are on the inside, and whether you're willing to hold your ground when things get physical. Street politics don't pause just because someone went platinum. If anything, being famous can make you a target, because now you're somebody that other people want to make a name off of. You're a trophy, and that is an incredibly dangerous position to be in. Now let me break down the specific incident, because this is the part that has everybody talking, and I want to make sure I get this right because there's been a lot of misinformation floating around. According to multiple sources and reports that started circulating, Pooh Shiesty was involved in a serious altercation inside the federal facility where he's being housed. And we're not talking about a little scuffle in the yard. We're talking about a coordinated jump, meaning multiple people, reportedly affiliated with the Crips, jumped Pooh Shiesty, multiple attackers. And during this altercation, Pooh Shiesty reportedly suffered significant injuries, including, and this is the part that went absolutely viral, getting a tooth knocked completely out. Oh my God, bro, a tooth knocked out. Now look, I know some people online were making jokes about this, and I get it, the internet is the internet. But when you really sit with what that means, a tooth knocked out means the level of violence in that fight was severe. You don't knock someone's tooth out with a light punch. That is serious, significant blunt force trauma to the face. That means Pooh Shiesty took some real damage in that fight, and the reports of him being in critical condition, which is what initially caused this story to explode, suggest that the injuries went beyond just the tooth. We're talking about a situation serious enough that there was genuine concern for this man's well-being. That's actually crazy, like genuinely insane when you think about it. But wait, before I get into the full breakdown of what went down and why, I need y'all to understand something about prison gang politics, because without that context, you won't fully understand why Crips specifically would be targeting Pooh Shiesty. And this is where it gets really deep. So Pooh Shiesty is from Memphis, Tennessee. Now Memphis has its own gang culture that is very distinct from what you see in Los Angeles, Chicago, or other major cities. Memphis street culture is heavily rooted in homegrown sets and affiliations that developed independently. And this is crucial. When Memphis artists blow up and their music starts reaching a national audience, they inevitably get associated with certain gang affiliations, whether they're explicitly claiming them or not. Now, Pooh Shiesty has been publicly associated with the Bloods, specifically due to his affiliations with certain artists and people in his circle who rep blood sets. When you're in a federal prison, you are navigating a completely different ecosystem, because federal prisons house people from everywhere. You might be from Memphis, but now you're locked up with people from Compton, people from South Central, people from Chicago, people from New York, and all of those people brought their affiliations with them. So when you have a prominent figure who is associated with a blood-affiliated circle walking into a facility where there is a significant Crip population, that is a recipe for exactly the kind of conflict that reportedly happened to Pooh Shiesty. This is not random. This is not senseless. In the world of prison gang politics, this is almost, and I hate to say it, almost inevitable. The streets don't stay outside when the door closes. Y'all seeing this? You understanding how deep this goes? And here's where it gets insane on another level, because there's a question that a lot of people have been asking, and it's a legitimate one. People are saying, why doesn't Pooh Shiesty just go into PC? For those who don't know, PC stands for protective custody. It's basically a separate housing unit where inmates who are at risk can go to be separated from the general population. And on paper, that sounds like the obvious solution, right? Famous rapper at risk, just go into PC and you're safe. But here's the thing, now, and I'm not even lying when I tell you this, in prison culture, going into PC carries a massive stigma. Like, we're talking about one of the most socially damaging moves you can make in that environment. In prison culture, requesting protective custody is seen as an admission that you cannot handle yourself in general population. It's seen as weakness, and once you're labeled as someone who ran to PC, that label follows you, even when you get out. Even on the streets, people will say you checked in, they'll say you couldn't hold your own. And for someone like Pooh Shiesty, someone who has built an entire image around being authentic, around coming from the streets, around being the real deal, going into PC would be seen as the ultimate contradiction of everything he's put out into the world. His music, his persona, his whole brand is built on being solid. And in street culture and prison culture, those two worlds are not as separate as people on the outside think. A decision made inside can absolutely affect your credibility when you walk back out those doors. So Pooh Shiesty is in this impossible position where asking for protection would cost him his reputation and his credibility, things that are directly tied to his career and his standing. But not asking for protection means staying in a situation where he is clearly at risk of serious physical harm. Bro, that's actually one of the most heartbreaking dilemmas I've thought about in a long time. No cap. Now let's talk about what life in federal prison is actually like for Pooh Shiesty day to day, because I think a lot of people have this Hollywood idea of what it's like being a celebrity in prison, and the reality is so different from that. And first of all, he does not have his own cell. He does not have special accommodations. He does not get to eat better food or have a nicer bunk because he has platinum records. In a low-security federal facility, you are in a dormitory-style setting most of the time. Open bays, multiple people, very little privacy. You're living in extremely close quarters with people from all different backgrounds and all different affiliations and all different regions of the country. Now, some people might think, okay, but at least people are going to show him love because of his music, right? Like, at least he can bond with people over the music. And yes, to some degree, having name recognition can open doors. People know who you are. Some people respect the art, but that cuts both ways, because some people want to test you because of who you are. Some people want to see if the image matches the reality. Some people want to take something from you, whether that's money, commissary, or clout, just because you're somebody. And then there's the financial element. People know Pooh Shiesty has money outside. Even though you can't access your outside money directly in prison, it's understood that someone like him can have money put on his books, his commissary account, by people on the outside. And that makes you a target in a different way, because people will try to tax you. They'll try to extort you. Give me commissary or else. And for someone who has resources, refusing to pay can escalate into exactly the kind of violent situation that Pooh Shiesty reportedly found himself in. So get this, being rich and famous in prison might actually make your situation more dangerous, not less. Chat, are we surprised? Because I kind of am and kind of aren't at the same time. Let me also talk about the mental side of this, because I think this gets overlooked way too much when we talk about incarcerated artists. Because what happened to Pooh Shiesty physically is obviously serious. But what's happening to him mentally? This is a 20-something-year-old man who went from being one of the hottest artists in the country, performing at festivals, recording in studios, traveling, living that life, to being locked inside a federal correctional institution with no real end in sight for years. And while he's in there, the music world keeps spinning. New artists are emerging. People who were coming up at the same time as Pooh Shiesty are continuing to build their careers, drop projects, go on tours. And he's watching all of that from the inside with extremely limited communication and no ability to participate. That is psychologically brutal in a way that most of us cannot fully comprehend. And now, on top of all of that psychological weight, on top of the separation from his family, from his freedom, from his career, he's dealing with physical violence. He's dealing with the constant threat of danger. He's dealing with the knowledge that in that environment, even if something happens to him, the response from staff might be slow or inadequate, because that's another reality of federal prison. The staff-to-inmate ratio is not great. Guards cannot be everywhere at all times, and when something goes down in a yard or a dorm, it can escalate quickly before anyone intervenes. This is where it gets serious for real. This is not entertainment at this point. This is a human being in a genuinely dangerous situation. And so, what's being done about it? What is the Bureau of Prisons doing about Pooh Shiesty's safety? This is a question that his legal team and his family are almost certainly raising, and it's a question that deserves an answer. Now here's the frustrating reality. The Bureau of Prisons is notoriously secretive about what happens inside their facilities. They don't exactly put out press releases when an inmate gets jumped. They don't hold press conferences about altercations in the yard. Information leaks out through other inmates, through legal communications, through family members who piece together what's happening from limited phone calls and visitations. What we do know is that when a serious incident occurs, something significant enough to be described as leaving someone in critical condition, there are supposed to be protocols. There's supposed to be medical evaluation, documentation, investigation. The inmate who was attacked is supposed to receive medical care. And there are supposed to be consequences for the people who carried out the attack. But here's where the system fails people, famous and not famous alike, over and over again. Because in federal prison, even when attacks happen, even when people get hurt, the institutional response is often slow, often inadequate, and often does not address the root cause of the conflict. You can investigate an attack after the fact all you want, but if the conditions that led to that attack haven't changed, if the same people are still in the same facility, if the underlying gang politics haven't been addressed, if the target is still in general population, then you're just setting the stage for the next incident. And that is the most terrifying part of this whole situation. Because if Pooh Shiesty refuses PC, and if the facility doesn't take serious steps to address his safety, then the question isn't whether something else could happen. The question is when. No cap. That keeps me up thinking about, now I want to address something because there are people online who are saying things like, he made his choices. He knew what that life was about. This is what happens when you live that lifestyle. And look, I get it. I understand that perspective. The choices Pooh Shiesty made that led to him being in federal prison are not debatable. He pleaded guilty. He acknowledged what he did. There are no ifs and buts about that. But here's what I want y'all to understand, and this is important, so really listen. The fact that someone made mistakes and is serving time for those mistakes does not mean they deserve to be beaten, to have their teeth knocked out, to potentially be critically injured in a prison facility. The legal system sentenced Pooh Shiesty to time. The legal system did not sentence him to being jumped by a group of people and left in critical condition. Those are two very different things. And beyond just Pooh Shiesty specifically, this story is a window into the broader reality of what happens in American federal prisons. The gang politics, the violence, balance, the impossible choices between safety and reputation. The way the system is structured in ways that almost guarantee conflict rather than rehabilitation. This is happening to thousands of people who aren't famous rappers, people whose names you'll never know, people who don't have social media accounts blowing up their stories. And that's something worth thinking about for real. What if I told you that the conditions that led to what happened to Pooh Shiesty are the same conditions that thousands of incarcerated people are navigating right now in facilities across the country? Y'all sitting with that? Let me take it back for a second and talk about something else that's been coming up in conversations online about this situation. People have been talking about the fact that Pooh Shiesty specifically, given his profile, given his 1017 Records connection, given Gucci Mane's background, might have actually had people expecting him to be a certain way in prison, like there were expectations on him from multiple directions. And from one direction, you have people who look up to him, who respect his music and his image, who are expecting him to carry himself a certain way on the inside. Don't check in, hold your ground, stay solid, represent properly. From another direction, you have people who actively want to test that image, who want to see if the real Pooh Shiesty matches the one on the records. And in prison, the way you test someone is not with words, it's with action. So he's walking into this environment with a target on his back from multiple directions simultaneously. And that is an almost impossible position to be in for anybody, let alone a young man in his early 20s who, regardless of what he's done, is still a human being navigating an incredibly complex and dangerous situation. And look, Gucci Mane himself did federal time. Gucci knows what that world is like. And even Gucci, with all of his reputation and his status, went through serious difficulties during his incarceration. It's not a game in there. It is genuinely, truly not a game. So get this, there's another layer to this that I haven't even touched on yet, and I think it's one of the most interesting parts of the whole story. And that's the question of what happens to Pooh Shiesty's career after all of this. Because right now, while he's incarcerated, his music is still out there. People are still streaming it. He's still getting playlisted. The streaming royalties are still coming in. His name is still alive in the culture. And there's actually a long history of rappers whose profiles grew while they were incarcerated. Think about it. Some of the most anticipated releases in hip-hop history have been while incarcerated, or first project after release albums. The incarceration itself becomes part of the narrative. But here's the thing, that only works if the artist comes home. That only works if they're healthy, if they're intact, if they're able to pick up their career where it left off. And with every incident, like the one that reportedly happened to Pooh Shiesty, the question of what condition he'll be in when he finally does walk out of that facility becomes more uncertain. And that's not just a business question, that's a human question. Is this person going to be okay? Is he going to come home the same way he went in, minus a few years? Or is this situation going to leave marks on him, physical and psychological, that are going to follow him long after the sentence is served? I'm not even lying, that's the part of this story that hits different when you really think about it. Now let's talk about the tooth specifically for a second, because this detail, as brutal as it is, tells us a lot about the nature of the attack. When someone gets a tooth knocked out in a fight, that fight was not a one-on-one where people squared up. Getting a tooth knocked out usually means you're taking shots from multiple angles, you're being hit while you're down, or while you can't defend yourself, you're being overwhelmed. It's the kind of injury that comes from a sustained, coordinated assault, not a clean one-punch situation. And remember, this is reportedly a jump, multiple people. That's not a fair fight. That's not two people having a disagreement that escalates. That is a group of people making a coordinated decision to assault one person. And in that kind of situation, outnumbered multiple attackers, potentially in a location where staff are not immediately present, your options are extremely limited. You can fight back as best you can, but the math is just not in your favor. And this, right here, is one of the reasons why prison reform advocates talk about the need for better monitoring, better staffing, better intervention. Because a jump like this doesn't happen in 1 second. People had to coordinate, people had to move together. And the fact that it happened at all, that it reached the point of someone being in critical condition with a tooth knocked out, suggests that the system failed to prevent something that, with proper attention and resources, might have been preventable. That's actually insane when you lay it out like that. Chat, are we seeing the full picture now? And here's something else that I think is really important to understand about this whole situation. The way information spreads about prison incidents involving famous people is really complicated, because on one hand, the actual facts can be very hard to verify. Prisons are closed institutions. Communication is limited. Information that gets out is often second-hand or third-hand. Stories can get distorted or exaggerated or, in some cases, completely fabricated for clout. So when you're looking at the reporting around what happened to Pooh Shiesty, you have to apply some critical thinking, the broad strokes, that something serious happened, that there was a violent altercation involving gang-affiliated individuals, that Pooh Shiesty suffered injuries. Those elements have been consistent across multiple sources. The specific details, exactly how many people were involved, the exact extent of every injury, the precise medical status, those are harder to pin down with certainty. What I can tell you is that this story spread the way stories spread when there's real substance behind them. This wasn't just a random rumor that popped up on one blog and disappeared. This got attention from multiple outlets, from people with connections to people inside, from people who have track records of breaking accurate information about incarcerated artists. So while I'm always going to tell y'all to think critically, the core of this story carries real weight. And the reaction from people who know Pooh Shiesty, from people in his circle, from people in the Memphis rap scene, that reaction has been real. This is not being dismissed or laughed off as fake. People who care about Pooh Shiesty are genuinely concerned, and that concern tells you something. So let me bring it all together, because I want to make sure y'all leave this video with a full understanding of what's happening and why it matters. Pooh Shiesty is one of the most naturally gifted young rappers to emerge from Memphis in a generation. His run in 2021 was genuinely special. The mixtape, the features, the critical reception, the commercial success. He had a real moment that a lot of artists spend their entire careers chasing and never find. And then a combination of choices and circumstances led him to federal prison at 21 years old. Inside that prison, he is navigating one of the most complex and dangerous social ecosystems that exists in America. Gang politics, territorial tensions, the impossible choice between safety and reputation, the psychological weight of watching your life and career pause while the world keeps moving. And now, on top of all of that, a violent, coordinated assault that left him reportedly in critical condition, with a tooth knocked out, with injuries serious enough to generate nationwide attention. He won't go to PC because in his world, in the world he came up in, that would be a betrayal of everything he's represented. That would be checking in. That would be the move that ends his credibility. So he stays in Gen Pop and he takes his chances. And that means that every day he's in that facility, he is at risk. And the system, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, has a responsibility to protect the people in its custody, whether they're famous or not, whether they have platinum records or not. Every single person behind those walls is entitled to basic physical safety. And when that basic obligation fails, when someone ends up in critical condition after being jumped in a federal facility, that is a systemic failure, full stop. Bro, when I lay it all out like that, when you see the full picture, it's genuinely one of the most sobering stories to come out of the rap world in years. And I don't mean that in a dramatic way. I mean it in a real human way. I want to say one more thing before I wrap this up, because I think it deserves to be said. There are a lot of people, fans, people in the culture, people who grew up on the same streets, who are genuinely praying for Pooh Shiesty right now, who want to see him come home, who want to see him healthy, who want to see him get back in a studio and remind everybody what he's capable of as an artist. And I think that sentiment is important, because it's easy to let these stories become just content, just views, just something to talk about for a week until the next story comes. But there's a real person in the middle of this. Lontrell Donnell Williams Jr., 20-something years old, somebody's son, somebody's family, a genuinely talented artist who made real mistakes and is paying for them, but who also deserves to be safe while he serves his time. That's not a controversial statement. That's just basic human dignity, and I think it's worth saying out loud. And that's the full breakdown of the Pooh Shiesty situation. The jump, the injuries, the tooth, the prison politics, why he won't go into PC, what his day-to-day is actually like in there, and what it all means for one of Memphis's most talented young artists. But yo, if you learned something from this video, if this opened your eyes to something you didn't fully understand before, you gotta hit that like button, because it genuinely helps this channel more than you know. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about the whole situation. Are you worried about Pooh Shiesty? Do you think the Bureau of Prisons needs to do more? I want to hear from y'all for real. And if you want more content like this, deep dives, real breakdowns, no fluff, just facts, make sure you subscribe, because we are not slowing down over here. We got more videos coming that are going to hit just as hard as this one, if not harder. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.